Hey, DIY Dad here. Welcome back for another little project. And one of the interesting things about the DeLorean, which is featured in a couple of these videos, is this portion of the window, which is the only part of the window that actually opens. The rest of this is fixed. More interesting about my particular car is as far as this window actually closes without assistance. I can grab it and pull it up the rest of the way and it'll stay, which doesn't go up any higher than that. And the reason is what we're going to deal with today. So we're going to replace the window regulator on the DeLorean DMC-12, which I've been told is a nightmarish job. We'll see. Here we go. Now, when it was released in 1981, the DeLorean came standard with power windows, not uncommon for the other luxury sports cars in that segment at the time. And there's a switch down here on the dash that controls them, and as you can see, mine go down just fine. But when you start to bring them back up, what happens is this. And that noise is the problem. So I'm going to show you the part that we're going to replace it with. We'll talk about why this happens, at least why I believe this is happening. We're not going to know for sure until we get into this door. My passenger window works perfectly. This is purely a driver's side issue, at least so far. But yeah, let's get into it. I'll grab the other part and talk through it. All right, here's our replacement window regulator from DeLorean Go. This is left-hand window. They were nice enough to write that on there just to make sure that you got the right part. And you see we've got the window motor here, and we have a spool, and then there's a kind of curved piece of metal with this felt in it just for noise that runs up along here to that piece of metal which connects to the actual window. Now on this replacement unit, apart from having a stronger motor, this also has a metal kind of valley for this chain to go through. On the original, this was plastic. And what happens over time is this plastic gets brittle and it breaks right here at the elbow. And that little noise that we were hearing is that it tries to push this chain, or this cable rather, up through this track and push the window up. It's getting resistance, and that's causing it to pop out here through the broken plastic. And the noise you're hearing is that coiled chain pushing through and kind of escaping into this space. So the new unit should be pretty much foolproof. It should be the last time we have to do this. If my passenger side is still original, I'll probably have to do that one eventually. The trick on all of this, from what I've read, is getting this into the door. That seems to be the hardest part about what we're going to try to do. Now, obviously, in order to even test that theory, we're going to have to take that door apart. All right, the door panel on the DeLorean is separated into a couple pieces. There's the top part, there's this armrest, and the lower piece. Now, this top part is going to come off kind of by coming up and out. It's got a captive edge here, and it has fir tree clips that come down from the top. So the best way to get this off, assuming you can lower your window, is to lower the window completely, and you can see the edge of one of the fir tree clips right there. So you're gonna actually get a piece of trim puller underneath that and pop it up, and then the whole panel should come loose and you can pull it kind of up and off. So now that I've got them loosened, you can kind of see, so there's 4 across the top here. You're just gonna pry it straight up, and then you can use this to get a little bit of leverage on the ones that are back here as well, and just be real careful pulling those up to get this released, and then the whole panel should lift off and up. So you can see the panel is released. There's this sort of metal clip, so as you pull it up and off, you'll be able to free that, and then you should be able to just kind of work this loose. Here's the upper panel out of the car. So you can see there's no attachment points around the bottom. There's just these tabs that are captive behind the armrest piece. So you're just gonna sort of shake it loose and it'll pop out pretty easily. You shouldn't have to force it, mild pressure only. Now that the panel is removed, we're gonna take this lower support bracket off. You're gonna do that by removing 8 Phillips screws that are along this bottom edge, and that will allow this to come free. So my instructions said 8, but mine only had 7, and one of them is hidden. This one that's in the back corner, right up here, is a little bit tricky to see. It's that guy right there. We're talking black screws on black metal in a nice shadowy spot. So Be careful on that one because this is very flexible and can bend really easily. Aside from that one though, the other 6 are right along that bottom edge. I'm using the same technique I've used other times with projects like this because I want to make sure that the screws all stay with the parts. So all my parts getting lined up on this table. And I found one of these cases that allows you to take these little trays out. So I have a tray for each part where I'm putting the screws and fasteners in. So I know that those screws go with that part, so you can put it all back together nice and easily. The directions from DeLorean Go also suggest at this point that you inspect this piece of felt, which you can see on mine is torn away, and replace it or repair it while you have this taken apart, which I'll be doing here. So I'll probably just do a little surgery on this. It's in pretty good shape aside from the adhesive failing, so I'll just re-glue this along this edge. I know my passenger side one's actually in pretty rough shape, so I'll have to replace that one when I get into that door. All right, next we need to remove this black trim piece known as an escutcheon. It's a tough word, I'm probably not even pronouncing it right, but there are clips kind of on the front edge here and on the top. You want to just gently pry this loose, and then to remove it, you'll need 2 hands. You pull up on the release here for the door handle, and you'll be able to kind of lift this piece out and slide it off. And that'll free everything below it. It's not connected to like the switches or anything, it's a top piece of trim. Here's what that looks like outside of the car. You can see it's just held in by these little plastic clips. These are known to break pretty easily, and you can buy replacements for these online. DeLorean Go sells them. Most of the DeLorean parts places sell them. There's a few people that are 3D printing them as well to try to get a bit of a thicker material. But yeah, if you break one, they're not too expensive. I've replaced the passenger side one for that reason as well. All right, now that the panel's removed, our next step is to remove the power mirror switch. This is done just by prying along the edges to get it to pop out, and then there's a plug on the back. Here's the power window switch, or power mirror switch rather, taken out of the car. There's 2 little clips on the edge, and in pure accordance with Murphy's Law, my switch broke, of course, as I was taking it out of the car, so I will now be buying a replacement. But you should be able to get this out just by getting a tool underneath, pushing it on these tabs, and then popping it loose. These tabs are just holding against the bottom of the plastic. That's all that holds it in. Now the switch is out of the way, you can remove the 2 10mm bolts, which you'll find right down here, and then right in the hole where the switch used to be. Those 2 10mm bolts will release the grab handle. This may or may not come out of your lower panel. If it doesn't, don't force it. You'll be able to take it off with the lower panel. On mine, I was able to just kind of wiggle it out and set it free. That goes on the parts table. So grab handle removed. Next step is going to be removing the 5 screws that run across the top of this support bracket. My instructions to say to use a number 2 or number 3, depending on how wide these are. Some of these are kind of squared off, so should be 5 of them across the top, and that will loosen this. So with the 5 screws, you're just going to focus on the ones in this kind of gold bracket. So leave the other ones alone for right now. And then if your car hasn't been as abused as mine, you'll be able to now pry at the fir tree clips along the bottom, where mine just has a huge bead of what looks to be hot glue. So I'm going to peel that off, and I have a box of fir tree clips we're going to try to replace afterwards, because I don't know what the previous owner of this car was thinking. Looks like just a get it done kind of moment. So here's the lower panel removed. Mine did actually have the fir tree clips. They're just very broken. And then it had a whole ton of glue and silicone, I think, running along the bottom edge. But this is what it'll look like taken off the car. So once you get what should be those 5 bolts off the metal bracket, this will come free. Mine only had 4 across the top, so take that for what you will. But just go for the ones here. There's a black assembly that sticks down that has the latch and everything that can stay on. We're just taking the lower panel and the upper panel off. So here's the inside of the door shot at a very uncomfortable angle. So you can see what that looks like. Again, make sure you don't take this off. It warns if you do accidentally take this off, you need to put it back on and get it adjusted before you do anything else. Next step you're going to want to do is roll the window back up, if you can, to about 1 inch from the top. And that is going to put the carrier right there. You're going to remove those 2 M6 bolts that hold the window carrier onto the arm. Okay, so our next step would be to peel back this membrane, which has been horribly abused by the previous owner of this car. So I'm going to be replacing this as well. You can see it was cut and taped and glued in about 12 places, and I at one point had a mouse living inside this door. So I'm going to add an additional step of vacuuming out all of that crap And then we'll go to the next part, which is going to be to remove the lower part of the window motor, which is done by taking off these two screws and that screw right there. A little hard to see, but you're also going to want to remove these two wires from the top of the motor here, and one little bolt rather, from this grab handle. That's going to allow the motor to come loose. So the motor has to get pushed back to clear that, but you want to be very careful not to push against the skin of the door, or you can dent it. So this is where things get scary and fun, because you have to free these bolts up and then maneuver this thing to try to pull this motor out. Time travel update. I have a DeLorean, so we can go back in time. Plus, I haven't edited the video yet, so I literally am going forward and back in time all the time. But for this project, just as a note, I put in the wrap up, and I want to make sure to cover it here too as well. The interior surfaces of the doors on this car are unsmoothed, stamped stainless steel. These are razor sharp, like shockingly sharp. So recommend, if you don't want to cut yourself as often as I did in this particular project, get duct tape, run duct tape along the edges when you're going in there, or wear like gauntlet style gloves. You really need dexterity though, so duct tape is probably your best bet. But even so, go careful, because any of the cut openings on this car are wildly sharp. So yeah, save yourself some DNA. Get duct tape, put duct tape around all the openings. You'll thank me later. So here's the motor removed from the door, and I wish I could tell you I had a graceful way to do this. I don't. Essentially, what I did is I ended up removing the bolts for this bracket to give myself a little bit of extra room, and just sort of setting it aside. You can't take it out because of these bars, it's captive. And then I had to cut the end of that white tube off of it, slide the whole motor this way, and then just work it and angle it out this entry so that the whole thing could come out. Now for assembling the new one, they recommend taking off the brackets, which you can't take off from the old one, which will make it hopefully easier to get this back into the door, and then all of this will go back together. But it was a process of just figuring out how to get it around the brackets. I took this bracket out first, so kind of pushed it down, got that out, and then worked it until the other ones were out, and kept turning it and pulling it until it came out through this opening in the frontmost corner of the door on the driver's side. So on the new motor then, you're going to take off the two offset brackets, which were here and here. Set those aside for now, you'll use them again later. Then they provide a single screw M6 bolt that goes in here. You want to put that in, tighten it, don't over tighten it. They warn that you can break this right off if you do. And then the worst part about this is going to be getting this into the door. The recommendation from DeLorean Go is that you pull out these lights so that you can see into the door cavity, because you have to get the metal tube up into that space, and it's not going to want to do that. So having this open and having a buddy who has a flashlight and a long screwdriver or pry bar can help you to steer it through and get it into place. They warn to just be careful and slow as you do this, and to try to avoid using force, and to absolutely not hammer it. These come out pretty easy. I usually just pop the lenses out just with a flat screwdriver, and then you can just squeeze this rubber boot. This will pull straight out. You don't have to disconnect them, just leave them hanging, and that'll give you access to see inside the door as you do this part. Everything I've read says this is the worst part. Just go slow and careful. I wish I could show you a super cool way to do it. If I find one, I'll report in. Otherwise, about an hour from now, I'll be, hey, look, it's done, and I'll have cuts all over my hands. So just in case this works, I'm going to videotape this, and if not, never going to show this to light of day. But we're having trouble getting this into the door, so what we're going to try to do is take it apart. So I've removed the bracket from the new motor, and what I'm doing now is using hot glue to glue these spacers in place, because there's no way I'm ever going to align them once they're in the door. And the hope is that we can place the motor in the door, get this loosely in place, reattach it all together, because I can get this bar into position where it's supposed to be, but the motor is still outside of the door, and the second I try to position it in, everything just goes crazy because it's all firmly attached. So we're going to try this and see if this works, and then I'll report back. Okay, so that experiment worked. Essentially what we did is took the motor off the bracket, put the motor here and kind of tucked it in this corner, and then brought the bracket in, and we were able to attach it. Now the only way this worked is because we hot glued the spacers in place. Otherwise that would have been an absolute nightmare because clearance is really tight. We also have the grab handle bracket removed just to give us a little extra space, but it allowed us to take this bracket, get it in place, have the tube align where it needs to be, and then reattach everything down here, and now we can do final positioning on it. Okay, our new motor is placed. You see we've got our offset bracket set. The rearmost one goes to here, the frontmost one goes here. All of this is tightened. The bracket that we threaded, or the bolt that we threaded in rather, off that carrier goes here into this rearmost spot. That was a bit of a pain to do. I had to loosen these to get the angle right so I could actually get a nut on there, but that's all in place. The line then runs up through the door, comes out right up here on top, and I've got the carrier reattached there. So now we can move on to wiring and we can test this before we put all of this back together. So the new motor comes with this weatherproof plug. It has a dongle on it. This that we took off for install just to make it a little bit easier. It also comes pre-crimped with 2 of these butt connectors. Those are going to go to your existing wiring. So we're gonna have to cut off the initial plugs, strip those wires, and then those will get crimped into here. And I'm imagining, I'll confirm this, but it's gonna be as simple, well, it's not. So we have blue and orange, and here we have blue and black. So I'll check back with you once I have the polarity right on these. All right, so wiring test. I wired blue to blue and orange to black. And when I press the down on my control, my window goes up. So it does work, like it is moving it properly, which is nice, but it's moving it in the wrong direction. And it says in the instructions, if that happens, to just reverse the polarity of the wires. So it sounds like confidence is low on how these are actually wired, so I would recommend doing just that. So you strip the wires, you cut the ends off of your previous wires, strip them about 1/4 of an inch, just insert them into the butt connectors, and then I used just a piece of painter's tape to hold them temporarily while I did my test. Then once you get the polarity correct, then you can crimp these down, and then all these wires get tucked back in and we reassemble. For me, my reassembly is going to be a little bit partial because I need to get a new membrane. The previous one was hacked apart by the previous owner, so I'm going to get a new one of those. I need to get a new switch here, so I'm not going to probably show all of that reconnected. I'm going to put all this back together and get it loosely reassembled, knowing I'm going to have to come back in here again. So I'll get it partially reassembled so I can fully test this out, but it's moving the window correctly and it's not making a loud buzzing noise, so life is good. This method that I used of disassembling this, if you have a hot glue gun, I think that's a lot easier. Like the actual getting this motor in here, getting the bracket in, getting it all reattached and rebuilt in here took me all of about 3 minutes. And I spent a good 10 minutes trying to figure out how to maneuver it in with it all assembled. So if you have the ability to do that, I'd recommend that. Also, these offset brackets, don't expect these to line up perfectly. They didn't on mine. I had to bend them to get them in place and get the motor where I wanted it to be. This one especially, I had to bend down. And then that bolt's, problematic where it sits as well. But like most things DeLorean, you have to do a little bit of bending and a little bit of tweaking and a little bit of cleaning of the previous owner's mistakes. And in my case, a lot of vacuuming of rats and mouse nests out, because I had mouse nests all the way around this door, which explains the kind of musty smell. So life's good. I'm gonna get this reattached, crimped up, somewhat put back together, then we'll do an actual test. Obviously, I have a ways to go, but it's little things in life that for the first time in 2 years, I can do this. Awesome. So now it's just reassembly. So I'm going to pause at this point. I'm going to close out the video because, as I mentioned, I've got some work to do and some parts to purchase before I can put all this back together. But that's going to end this project. Reassembly is the opposite of disassembly. Just putting all the panels back together. Lower panel, grab rail or grab handle, upper panel, and then I have a bunch of fir tree clips to replace and a few things like that. But all in all, I mean, my method seems to not be that bad of taking apart the motor and putting it back together in the door. I don't know how you would do it without doing that. I'm not good enough to figure that out. So that's where we're at. So this then brings us to the end of another DIY dad project. I mean, not too bad for all of the, I guess, drama that you read online about this particular update. It wasn't easy. I cut myself multiple times. One thing about that, the indoor or the interior parts of this thing are razor sharp. It even says in the instructions that I have to be careful because you will potentially, quote, cut yourself beyond recognition, which I thought was a fantastic way to say that. So duct tape around the edges just to protect yourself a little bit. I didn't do that as much as I should have, but you know, say la vie. So this being the end of a DIY dad video, I of course owe you a dad joke. So did you hear about the family that installed a massive room-size picture window in their house, like floor-to-ceiling, wall-to-wall, end-to-end massive window? In the end, they really didn't like it. It was just a big pain to keep clean. All right, with any DIY project, it doesn't have to be perfect. Most important step is just to do it. Stay safe, take care. Catch you in the future. Bye.